Good afternoon and welcome. This is USDA's stakeholder webinar on the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program of additional eligible commodities as of August 17, 2020. My name is Latrice Hill. I serve as the Director of Outreach for USDA Farm Service Agency. As you know, we have been having a series of webinars for the past few months. I believe this is webinar number 8 or 9. And the reason for having these webinars is to make sure that you, as our stakeholders, you are working with producers, farmers, and ranchers across the country to make sure that they understand the program, have knowledge of the program, and know exactly how to apply. So today, I will continue to serve as the moderator. Today I have 3 colleagues with me. I have Jody Kenworthy, who is the Ag Program Specialist here at FSA. We also have Janae Prescott, who is another Program Specialist. And we have Chris Vasquez, who is the Disaster Assistance Section Head Chief. Now, before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things, a couple of reminders I want to remind you of. If you have any audio difficulties in hearing, and hopefully no one is having that already, but if you are, there is a phone bridge that is available that should be showing across your screen with the number. Feel free to dial in at that number at any time. If you have a question that you like to ask, feel free to put it in the chat box. We will work as hard as we can to answer as many questions as we can today. However, if we're unable to get to all of those questions, we will follow up with you later with a response. Also, as a reminder that there are several questions already featured on our farmers.gov/CFAP webpage under Frequently Asked Questions. Please feel free to utilize that page. So today we're going to talk about what's new with CFAP. What are some of the updates for specialty crop and livestock producers? And now we have CFAP for egg producers, nursery crop producers, and even aquaculture producers. So we've got a full agenda, but before we start talking about all of the new things, I want to recap some of the things that have changed and some of the things that have somewhat remained the same. As you know, COVID-19 has really impacted operations tremendously across our nation. And this program was developed to address 2 major challenges that the virus has caused, and that's price declines and supply chain disruption. This virus has caused a decline in demand for some commodities and affected the market supply chain. So we have many producers who have reported having challenges in getting their products to market before they spoiled. Some had to dump their milk before from contracts getting canceled, and then some were affected by school and restaurant closings. Well, this program is intended to provide relief through direct payments to producers that will cover, we know, only a portion of the impact that you've incurred. This in no way is meant to make you whole or to recoup all of your losses, but it is a way to provide assistance to you as quickly as possible. Right now, our offices are working as quickly as they can to provide you with assistance, either through our customer call center or through our offices, and processing those applications as quickly as they can to provide you with payment. Now, one of the changes that I wanted to bring forward to you is that now payments are 100%. You know, in the past, before August 17th, you remember that payments were being issued at 80% with that 20% to follow at a later date. So we are now at 100%, which means if you make an application now, you will receive 100% of what you have been approved eligible for. And as far as those of you who have already applied and received your 80%, you will now get that last remaining 20% to maximize the full payment that you were approved for. Another change that is different is that the deadline has been extended until September 11th. So we want to make sure that you share that with your producers and your members to know that there has been some additional time extended. As you know, with Farm Service Agency, normally it requires you to have a farm number, or there are certain eligibility requirements for you to participate in our programs. But for this program, you do not need to be an existing customer of USDA. In fact, a lot of our customers are brand new to us. Even those who have participated in the Small Business Administration's program, as you know, SBA had the Paycheck Protection Program, and they also had the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, which was PPP and EIDL. But that does not prevent you from participating in this program. What you do need to keep in mind, though, that there are payment limitations. And when I say payment limitations, USDA has a $250,000 per person legal payment limitation. Now, unlike some of the other FSA programs, special payment limitation rules are applied to participants that may be corporations, limited liability companies, limited partnerships, corporate entities. These types of organizations and companies can receive up to $750,000 based upon the number of shareholders, which is not to exceed 3, but those who are contributing at least 400 hours of active person management or personal active labor. So those are just a couple of reminders to keep in mind. So with this new announcement, there are some newly eligible commodities that have been added to the program. And just to recap, you may recall that USDA had a open comment period. We call it the Notice of Funds Availability, or NOFA, that allowed us to receive feedback from producers along with pricing data for commodities that were not initially included in the program. So through that comment period, which closed on June 22nd, USDA has been reviewing those, the data that was submitted. And I want to clarify this. It's not just that you submitted a comment that, oh, I would like to have this commodity added. We needed that pricing information for those particular dates that this program covers to have been added, to be included in that NOFA process. And all of that was spelled out in the Federal Register notice. So those that we were able to receive pricing data for, justification, and that USDA approved, they have now been added as an eligible commodity. So if you don't see your specific commodity that you requested or you submitted comments for, that means that it was not approved to be included in CFAP. Now, to find a listing of all of the new eligible commodities, we ask that you visit the farmers.gov website. Again, that is going to be your first stop in viewing everything: fact sheets, these recorded webinars, eligibility payments, the application, the payment calculator, which generates the application. All of those things are going to be on this website, so please make note of farmers.gov/CFAP. Applying, if this is your first time applying, again, for USDA, you're probably used to having to have a farm number. For this particular program, a farm number is not required. Now, there may be sometime further down the road when USDA reaches out and says, you are going to have to come back to the office and do a farm number because of a conservation compliance plan that has been identified. But for right now, to participate in the program, you do not have to have a farm number. So we encourage you to apply, have your members and producers apply. Again, that deadline has been extended until September 11th. You can apply online. You know, our offices are available for appointments and telephone appointments only, or some of our offices, but a lot of them are still closed. So a lot of this can be done online. There is a process that is very secure. We have tools in place where you can actually enter your information into the calculator. The calculator spits out the application. All of the additional forms that you need are available online, and you can upload and submit that electronically to your county office. But again, you also have the option of making an appointment with the office. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but just know that those options are available to you. So if you've previously applied and you need to make an amendment to the application, these are the few options that you have available. You could actually send in application updates, and to do that, you would need to use that payment calculator again, fill out the form. The AD 3114 is the form that the calculator generates, and add any additional eligible crops that you need to submit to your office. Again, you can do this online. You can make a phone appointment, or you can call and schedule an in-person appointment. But please know that you can revise your application to include some of these new eligible commodities that you might have. So one thing that we think is not being utilized to its potential is the customer call center. This is a hotline or a call line that has been established. It is made up of USDA employees, majority FSA employees, who can not only give you general information about the program or help identify your county office, but let's say as a stakeholder you have several members who do not have access to internet. They're unable to download all of these applications online. You can call this call center and one, you can request applications be mailed to you or to your members. If you have producer information, that producer can call this number, give their information. The customer call center will enter that information into the calculator for them to generate the application and send that application to them, either via email or by mail. And then that way the producer already has that form 3114 pre-filled, and they can take that to the office for their appointment. A lot of people don't know that service is available through the call center, so I just wanted to stress the importance of utilizing the call center to its potential. 877-508-8364 is that number. We do have a translation line. You will be prompted to press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish. You will also need to hold the line if there is an additional language that you need a translation for. So there's several different languages available. It just needs to be identified at the front end of the call. I've pretty much covered this slide. I've talked about how you don't need to have that farm number. You may need it further down the line if there's a conservation compliance aspect to it. But there are some other forms that are available that you will need when you apply for the program. Some of these forms include the tax ID number, providing your personal information. I want to get that form number for you here. I don't want to tell you anything wrong. That is a form number. Well, you know, I don't have that in front of me. It's on some of our other calls, and it's also on the CFAP application. But there are different, if you have a entity or if you have a corporation or LLC, there are some additional forms that you may have to provide to identify the type of operating structure that you have. The AGI form is an adjusted gross income form to certify that you're eligible to receive payment. And then there's, of course, my favorite, the direct deposit form that you'll need so that you will have that opportunity to have the funding sent directly to your account. So just quickly, these are a couple of, or a few of the specialty crops that have been added since August 17th. I'm not going to call them all out, but as you can see from A to Y here, we've got everything from aloe leaves to leeks, kumquats, parsley, pomegranates, turnips, watercress, pumpkins, dates. These are just a few that have been added. Again, for that full listing, you will need to go to the farmers.gov/CFAP website. And what I'd like to do now is bring forward one of my colleagues, Janae Prescott, to talk to you a little bit about CFAP for specialty crops. Janae, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Latrice, for having me here today. As Latrice said, I'll go over just a few highlights of some things we've added to CFAP. The first slide you're seeing is commodities that were previously eligible under buckets or categories 2 and 3 that now qualify under the price decline or sales loss category. You can see we have the onions, the green onions, pistachios, peppermint, spearmint, walnuts, and watermelons. And now you may be thinking, on the previous slide you just saw Latrice show, peppermint and spearmint are newly added commodities, and that is accurate. We have them also listed as adding to a price decline because mint was previously eligible, and we have split that out now between mint, peppermint, and spearmint. We also have adjusted some rates, and if you look at the slide now, you'll see that the same commodities have payment rate adjustments. So in addition to being added to bucket 1 or category 1, they also have rate adjustments for these commodities. And so on those rate adjustments, if you apply for any of these commodities that had a rate increase, the producer will automatically receive the payment for those commodities that the rate increased and they had already applied for that commodity. And if the producers previously applied and received a CFAP payment for commodities prior to, and now they want to apply for a commodity that is eligible under bucket 1 or category 1 with a price decline, they need to contact their local FSA office and apply for those commodities under category 1. In addition to those commodities being added to CFAP or being added to the price decline, we also have additional livestock that are now eligible for CFAP. All sheep are now eligible. Only lambs and yearlings, sheep less than 2 years old, were previously eligible, so now we have all sheep as eligible livestock. And you can check out the previous webinars on applying for livestock for more information on that.
Great. Thanks so much for those updates on the specialty crop, Janae. Right now, one of the new commodities that was added was eggs. And I was really interested in hearing about the eggs. We've got one of our colleagues with us, Jody Kenworthy. She's going to talk to us a little bit about eggs. And Jody, my first question before you even get started, I have a lot of people that run bakeries down in Florida. And everybody knows that the key to moisture, to having the best baked products, is to use duck eggs, not chicken eggs. So my first question to you right off the bat is, are duck eggs eligible for CFAP?
Hey, Latrice, thank you. So I have some bad news. They are unfortunately not eligible.
Oh.
I know, I'm sorry. We actually didn't get any comments on duck eggs in the NOFA, but we got a lot on chicken eggs. And so I have over time become, I would consider myself an egg expert. And so I'm sorry about the duck eggs.
Cute.
But chicken eggs are good too, and some of them are eligible. So the one thing is for eggs, they are split into sort of two different categories, shell eggs and then breaker eggs. Breaker eggs can be broken further down, pun intended, into liquid, frozen, and dried eggs. Now, a lot of you might already know what their different uses are, but a lot of time liquids are for things like mayonnaise or in the carton or ice cream. Frozen eggs are usually used for to be cooked at schools or other institutions. And then dried eggs are usually in packages, such as shelf cake mixes. And then shell eggs are your everyday, carton or case. So when looking at the different egg types, because there are 4 different markets, we evaluated all 4, and only liquid and frozen eggs had the 5% or greater price decline. So unfortunately, shell and dry eggs are not eligible. For the payment, the producer can only apply for one payment, or only for their portion of the crop, and they get one payment. The payment rates, which aren't listed in this presentation, are on the farmers.gov /CFAP/eggs. It's 6 cents per pound for frozen eggs for the CARES Act, and 2 cents per pound for CCC for frozen eggs, and then 5 cents per pound for the liquid eggs for CARES Act, and 2 cents per pound for liquid eggs for CCC. But now all payments will be paid at 100%, and they'll get them all when they apply. So what goes into the application? The producer first reports their first quarter egg production, and the first quarter is January, February, and March 2020 production in pounds. This is the rate we used in the formula is very similar to the dairy one. This is done in pounds, but there is a conversion factor listed in this slide if the producer only knows their production in terms of shell or cases, and there are 30 dozen eggs in a case. To fill out the application, they'll just do Part C. It's under where previously it was only the dairy production information section. They'll put in their commodity, which is either liquid or frozen eggs in pounds, and then the different production. For documentation, in case there is a spot check, just anything that shows that they had those sales, those statements in the first quarter. That could be contracts, sale receipts, marketing statements, anything like that. And for an example, I have to say eggs are pretty straightforward, but as a quick and easy example, this egg LLC has about 1 million layers. So those are chicken, hen layers. And in January, February, March, they have roughly around the same amount of production, close to 2.5 million pounds. They put that on Part C of the form, and then those amounts are multiplied by the CARES Act rate and the CCC Act rate to get a total payment of $533,000 and some odd dollars total. Now note that if they are only one person or only one person within the organization or in the company only does 400 hours of active personal label, then they will be limited to the $250,000 payment limit. So, Latrice, any other questions? Hopefully I won't disappoint you as much as the last one.
No, I think you've got it. One thing I do for those who are listening or watching for the first time, you made a reference to the CARES Act and CCC, and some may not know what those are. Could you just briefly tell us what is the CARES Act?
Sure. So the CARES Act was passed, I think, in mid to late March, and that is the Coronavirus Assistance something Act, and that was to aid different it was pretty extensive, but for Farm Service Agency, it was to enact a program that would financially help producers suffering from losses due to coronavirus from price decline. So that is the portion, the CARES portion of the CFAP payment, and then the CCC is the Commodity Corporation charter. Or I might be missing a C. Sorry, Latrice. And that is actually through USDA, and we're paying on top of the CARES Act an additional payment to producers for inventory.
Okay, good. I just wanted to clarify those two different payment structures. Not sure if many of you have read the actual legislation or know how the program's rolled out, but it's two different funding sources at play here. So that's what she meant when she said CCC and CARES. Jody, thank you so much for clarifying that and telling us about eggs. I know my good friends or bakers down in Florida are going to be disappointed that the duck eggs aren't included, but we are glad that the poultry industry or the chicken eggs are included. So wonderful. Right now, we want to get to another new commodity that has been added, and that is nursery crops and floriculture. And to go over this, we have with us Chris Vasquez. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Latrice. Thank you so much. So I want to get started, and we'll just go through and talk about some nursery crops and floriculture and how it's going to apply to this to the CFAP. So when we're looking at CFAP, as far as nursery crops are decorative or non-decorative plants, or grown in a container or controlled environment for commercial sale. And floriculture is cut flowers, which includes cut greenery from annual and perennial flowering plants, which is also grown in a container or controlled environment for commercial sale. Now, I know the next question you're going to have is, what is controlled environment? And I know there's been quite a few questions on that. So when we look at controlled environment, what we're talking about is it's met when growers take actions to grow crops, including field-grown crops, that are considered normal practices for that crop in their region. So structures, fields, facilities, soil, water, nutrients, et cetera, that goes into it. So some examples of how field-grown crops can be considered controlled is control of the land or soil, providing nutrients, control of irrigation, insect infestation, or disease control. So all of those are examples of what can be considered controlled. So when we're looking at the eligible nursery crop categories, and now when I say nursery crop, that also applies to floriculture, that these are the two categories of how this commodity can qualify for payments. And so the first category is that it was delivered and it went spoiled or unpaid. So that means that there was inventory that was shipped sometime between January 15th and April 15th of 2020, but subsequently spoiled or went unpaid due to loss of marketing. So it got somewhere in transit and didn't get accepted, and it was lost at that point in time. The other category is where it was not delivered. So the inventory that was not sold between January 15th and April 15th and will not be sold. So it had shipments that did not leave the farm, or inventory that was never sold due to complete loss of the marketing channels and was destroyed. So that's what we're talking about, are the two categories that are going to apply for these nursery and floriculture crops. So payment rates. The payment rates offset a percentage of the wholesale value of these eligible commodities. So producers, just as we've talked about earlier so far today, is that it's a self-certification where, so the producers are expected to come in, provide the FSA county office with a certification of what their wholesale value is. And it's important that they maintain records to support on where that's at in case there is a spot check. But when the payments are going, it's when they go through, it's going to be taking a look at the category. So if, for instance, someone was to qualify for both categories, it's still only one payment that goes out. And the producers can only apply for a payment for their portion of ownership of a crop. So let's take a little bit further look at Category 1, which is delivered or spoiled and unpaid. So this is inventory that was shipped between January 15th and April 15th of 2020, but subsequently spoiled or was unpaid due to a loss of that market channel. Because I'm sorry?
Hey, Chris, I think
Go ahead, Chris. I think we just had some feedback. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Due to the COVID-19. So the CFAP payment for this Category 1 is 15.55% of the wholesale inventory value of the eligible inventory. So that's a 15.55%. So the producers, when they come in, are going to report to us a wholesale value, so $100,000. That's going to be multiplied times this factor for Category 1, or rate. So as I said, the producers are going to report that wholesale value of inventory that's shipped, delivered between January 15th of 20 and April 15th of 2020, for which no payment was received or will be received. Again, it's only producer's portion of the ownership. And another part that's eligible is the inventory that was shipped, that was donated, but no payment was received. And ineligible inventory is inventory that would have been sold after the April 15th of 2020. So to go back and try to figure out what this wholesale value is take a look at invoices, correspondence with customers, inventory records showing the retail/wholesale wholesale prices and quantity. So it's important to take a look at those things. The next is Category 2 for when it's not delivered. So this category is inventory that was not sold between January 15th and April 15th of 2020 and was destroyed. So the CFAP payment in this case will pay for 13.45% of the wholesale inventory value of that eligible inventory. So what's going to go on the application in this instance? Producers report the wholesale value inventory that was not shipped as of April 15th of 2020. Eligible is inventory that was not shipped and subsequently donated or destroyed. Ineligible is any inventory that was in storage that may be sold after April 15th of 2020. Also, as ineligible is inventory that is normally called in advance of shipping or upon delivery, as well as any inventory that's been sold at a discount price. And once again, it's only producers' portion of ownership interest can be reported. So it's their interest that they have is all they can be paid on. And it's the same with Category 1, producers take a look at their invoices for the purchase of the inventory, possibly pictures, inventory records showing retail and wholesale prices, as well as quantity. So the filling out of the CFAP form. So this is for the nursery crop floriculture producers. The line items on this form that are going to be, that apply for these producers is item number 25, going to make the indication whether it's, and it's just a single line item. So if you have multiple nursery crops, it's just one line item for nursery. If you have many different kinds of cut flowers, it's one entry for floriculture. And then item 26B is that category, that first category, and then items 27B is that second category. So 26B, that's where we're giving the value of the inventory that shipped or spoiled or went unpaid as of April 15th of 2020. That category 2 is the value of inventory not sold as of April 15th of 2020. So this, just going back through and to reiterate what we just discussed, item 25, like I said, it's going to either be nursery or floriculture. It's going to go there. Item 26B, as we talked about, that's that category 1 that was delivered and spoiled or went unpaid. And keep in mind, remember that the value entered on the form is the wholesale inventory value in dollars. Item 27B is intercategory 2 info here. This is for when it's not delivered. Remember, this is the value entered on the form should be wholesale inventory value in dollars.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Something that you said earlier about something that will never be sold under, I think you were talking about under category 2. Exactly what does that mean, never be sold?
So it's something I can think of an example of is it was like Easter lilies. So Easter occurred during this time frame between January and April, and those Easter lilies had a finite time for when they would be ready. By next year, they may not. I mean, if they don't hold, if they can't be sold. And ultimately, I had a whole inventory of Easter lilies that I had to destroy because I can't hold them till the next year. That's what we mean by that.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks so much for that.
Sure. So here's an example with category 1. Flora Farmer had 100% interest in 10 boxes of peonies with a wholesale value of $1,500. Delivered to a wedding venue on the 1st and 15th of each month from January 15th, 2020 through April 15th. So although there's a contract and agreed upon price, there was no price guarantee. The revenue paid for the shipments received during January and February 2020, but beginning with March 2020 shipments, the venue had 0 events. The flowers spoiled and Flora Farmer was not paid and will certify to $4,500 as of the value of inventory shipped, but not sold and unpaid on the 83114, item 26B. An example under category 2 is the Nursery LLC has 2 operations, one located in Windham County, Connecticut, and one located in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. At the Connecticut operation, the company has 100% ownership of 400 Easter lilies, valued at $4,800. 300 were sold and 100 were disposed of, which were valued at roughly $1,200 due to a lack of market because of COVID-19. At the Massachusetts operation, the company has a 50% ownership of 250 tulips with a wholesale value of $2,500 in Massachusetts. 50 were sold and 20 were disposed of, which were valued at $2,000 due to a lack of market because of COVID-19. The Nursery LLC reported an inventory value of $2,200, 100% of the $1,200 plus 50% of the $2,000 as the inventory that was never sold in the AD 3114 on item 27B. So that brings us into.
All right. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to just take a quick break here and just say we're getting a lot of questions on the nursery crops. I want you all to continue to send in your questions. We will answer them as soon as we can. But now we're going to move over a little bit into aquaculture. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well. And again, we'll go over a few closing things at the end, as you know, like where can you find these forms, where's the listings, where would this webinar be, where can I get slides, all of that will be covered later. So Chris, if you would, go ahead and tell us a little bit about the aquaculture.
Thank you. So with aquaculture, there are certain commodities which are eligible, and those are crayfish, catfish, largemouth bass or carp, which are sold as live food fish, hybrid striped bass, red drum, salmon, sturgeon, and trout. So those are the singular ones. And then we have where some are grouped in together was ornamentals and tropicals. So that's what we see in our fish tanks. And so we don't have a breakdown of a line for a goldfish and a guppy. They're all going to get grouped together into the ornamentals, tropicals category. And then the next one is the recreational sport fish, which is farm-raised sport fish that's in a controlled environment. So again, this is if we have farm-raised trout, which are used to stock a pond for recreational sport fish. Same thing goes for catfish, or maybe we even have some, we've got some bass in there. If they're maintained for recreational sport fish in that controlled environment, then they're eligible. But we're going to group all of them together under recreational sport fish, so they won't be broken out singularly as the food fish or including crayfish are for the other eligible commodities. So this is, once again, if you were listening, we talked about the nursery and the floriculture. The eligibility, there's a controlled environment factor. And so eligible aquaculture must be grown and harvested in controlled environments, which includes raceways, ponds, tanks, and recirculating systems. Wild-caught aquaculture commodities are not eligible for CFAP. And additionally, there are some other aquaculture commodities which are not eligible for CFAP that's administered by the USDA, but are available for COVID relief through NOAA. So through state marine fisheries managements, territories, and tribes, these state territories and tribal agencies are dispersing funding for privately owned aquaculture businesses growing products in state or federal marine waters of the U.S. and the hatcheries that supply them. So the mollusks, that's been the big one, clams, mussels, oysters, scallops, they are not eligible for CFAP. They are eligible for COVID relief, but that's being handled through NOAA, Department of Commerce. Additionally, marine algae is also being handled that same way. Non-salmonoid marine finfish grown in marine waters, like we talked about, those are not eligible for CFAP, but would point you over to go look with the Department of Commerce on those.
Chris, quick question. Sorry to keep interrupting, but I was just looking at the listing of seafood there. Is tilapia not covered?
I'm sorry. Yes, tilapia is covered. I may have been reading that off of there. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes,
okay.
Tilapia food is covered on it.
Okay, we've got a lot of questions on that. So everyone, tilapia is covered, but again, the best thing for you to do is to visit the website. The website has all of the eligible commodities at farmers.gov CFAP. That's where you can get all of the eligible commodities. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. So when we're looking with aquaculture and the payments, there's a little bit of a twist in this. And we'll get into that. But producers of aquaculture commodities are eligible for CFAP payments and through basically two categories, and it depends on what the commodity is. So crayfish are eligible for two categories. The rest of aquaculture are eligible for two categories. Those categories are right here in front of us. So the first one, category one, applies to all of aquaculture, including crayfish. So sold inventory that suffered a price decline, that's that 5% price decline, that had a sales loss. So it's sold eligible inventory between January 15th and April 15th of 2020 that experienced a price decline. And that's, like I said, that applies to crayfish and all the aquaculture species that we talked about. The category two applies to aquaculture and excluding crayfish. And so it's market-ready inventory that was not sold. So it's going to be the producer's highest inventory of market-ready yet unsold fish on any date between January 15th and April 15th. And that's for everything except crayfish.
Chris?
And then yes.
I'm sorry, but there's another question that I've been asked to ask for you to clarify. What does wild caught mean?
For example, wild caught salmon or wild caught crawfish, anything that's not essentially propagated and maintained in a controlled environment. So this CFAP's not covering fishermen that are going out and collecting salmon or collecting crawfish or even collecting oysters that are not propagated. That's what we mean by wild caught.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And so going back to this now on the category three, it applies to crayfish only, and it does not apply to the rest of the aquaculture species. So it's crayfish inventory that was not sold as of April 15th due to a lack of market and will not be sold in the calendar year of 2020. So that is a little bit different. And just to keep in mind that there, no matter this, it matters really. Some species did not qualify for that category one. Some did. So, but it's the categories. There's not really three categories. We'll make a correction on this slide, but there's two categories depending on the commodity. So when we talk about category one, what is eligible for category one? So this is sold inventory that suffered a price decline. It's sold eligible inventory between January 15th and April 15th that experienced a price decline. And what we have eligible species for that is the crayfish, largemouth bass, carp, and salmon. And to see what those payments rates, please visit the farmers.gov and so you can see exactly what those rates are for those commodities. So what is going into category one? It's like we talked about, it's sold inventory that suffered a price decline. So what goes on the application? The producer is going to certify their inventory in pounds that was sold at a lower price between January 15th and April 15th of 2020 for each eligible species. They're only going to, producers are only going to put on their portion of ownership interest is all that can be reported. Ineligible things are inventory that is normally culled in advance of shipping or upon delivery, or as well as inventory sold at an agreed upon price and was or will be paid at that price or higher. So this payment formula is volume times a payment rate. And documentation to look for is take a look at invoices, maybe receipts, anything else that's going to show what that supports that lower price and how that price changed. So then we talk about category 2. So this is market-ready inventory that was not sold. And so this is where the producer is going to give us the highest inventory of market-ready yet unsold fish on any date between January 15th and April 15th. And these eligible species include catfish, largemouth bass, carp, the hybrid striped bass, red drum, salmon, sturgeon, tilapia. We got it right on this slide. Trout, ornamentals, tropicals, and as well as recreational sport fish. And once again, to see what these rates are, we can go to farmers.gov. So category 2, it's market-ready inventory that was not sold. So what's going to go on the application is the producer is going to certify to their highest volume of market-ready fish in pounds between January 15th and April 15th of 2020 for each eligible species. And just to point out that the ornamentals and tropicals, it's going to be by piece rather than by pound. So also keep in mind, as eligible is if the market-ready inventory between January 15th and April 15th, if that inventory was sold after April 15th, that doesn't matter for this category. So we're just looking at the inventory numbers between January and April. Once again, it's only producer's portion of ownership interest can be reported. And ineligible is inventory that's normally culled in advance of shipping or upon delivery, as well as inventory that was not market ready it's inventory that was not market ready. Payment formula is going to be that volume times the payment rate. And documentation to collect, again, it's going to be tracking inventory records, anything like that that's going to help to get what those numbers are. And then category 3. So keep in mind, like we discussed, this one applies to crayfish only. So this is inventory that's not shipped or remains unharvested. Crayfish inventory that was not sold as of April 15th due to a lack of market and will not be sold in calendar year 2020. So this applies, like I said, to crayfish only, and to see what those rates are, make sure you go to farmers.gov. So in this case, the producer is going to certify to their volume of inventory in pounds that was not sold as of April 15th due to a lack of market and will not be sold in the calendar year. Once again, it's only going to be for the producer's portion of the ownership interest. And ineligible inventory is inventory that was or will be sold in calendar year 2020. Again, this is volume times the payment rate, and documentation to go and take a look at, try to determine this as historical yields and sales that we would typically see during this time. So how to fill out the CFAP form. So it's in the same areas where the aquaculture and nursery was, except in this case, the areas that are going to apply is going to be for numbers 25, 26A, and 27A. So 25 is the commodity. Once again, it's going to be if you have multiple types of ornamental fish or multiple recreational sport fish, it's one line item for each. If let's just say a producer has salmon trout, it's one line item for salmon, another line item for the trout. 26A, this is for Category 1. So for each eligible species, this is going to be the volume of inventory that suffered a price decline. That's what's going to go into item 26A. Item 27A is either going to be Category 2, and that, keep in mind, remember, Category 2 is everything except crayfish, and Category 3 is crayfish. So it's going to be volume of available inventory is what the form says. We want to keep in mind that if it's for, and the form has the instructions to clarify what this is, but if it's aquaculture, it's January 15th through April 15th, and it's that highest inventory number. If it's crayfish, it's crayfish that was not sold by April 15th and will not be sold for the rest of the crop year, or for the rest of the calendar year 2020. That's what's going to go there for the, so there is a little bit of a difference right there, and just wanted to point that out. And so that item 27A is being used to account for two different categories. So here's an example. Squidward Starfish, as a salmon producer, was able to sell much of their inventory, but at a reduced price, to the Crab Shack LLC on March 3rd of 2020 to April 10th of 2020. The total sales for that time period was 42,490 pounds of fresh salmon. Mr. Starfish will certify to 42,490 as the volume of inventory that was sold and suffered a price decline on the AD 3114 under the volume of inventory sold, which is item 26A. Example 2 is Up Creek LLC has 100% ownership interest of 6 tilapia production ponds. 2 of the ponds were full of market-ready inventory totaling 8,000 pounds. They also have 50% ownership with Down Creek Farm of 8 more production ponds, of which 4 contain market-ready tilapia inventories totaling 13,000 pounds. Each entity will have a separate application. Up Creek LLC was certified of 14,000 pounds of market-ready inventory that was sold on the AD 3114 item 27A, which is the volume of inventory available. Example 3 is Fresh Pond Farm LLC had 100% interest in 3,500 weight of crayfish that were ready for harvest February 28th of 2020. All inventory was ready to be shipped and sold to the contracted buyer. The buyer was unwilling to accept the delivery of the product. Therefore, they remained on the farm and will be harvested next year. Fresh Pond Farm LLC was certified at 350,000 pounds of inventory not shipped or remain unharvested, which is the volume available inventory on the AD 3114, which is item 27A.
Well, that's a lot of information, but we really do appreciate you, Chris. Those examples mean so much because it allows a lot of our stakeholders to use that when they're working and communicating with producers. So before we go, a couple of things that I want to remind you all of. I've seen a lot of questions come through the chat requesting how can we get a copy of these slides. Please do keep in mind that this slide presentation and all of ours from all 8 of the webinars are online on our website, and that's the FSA.USDA for FSA.USDA.gov/outreach website. And we'll share that with you I think we've shared that in the chat for everyone to see, but you can get a copy of these slides. We will post it. You'll also be able to get it from farmers.gov/CFAP. They also have a copy of the presentation slides. Give us a few days. We do have to transcribe it, but once we transcribe it, we will post the recording as well as the slides. A couple of last-minute reminders I just want to remind you all of to remember that producers, you're self-certifying. Producers will be self-certifying that the information that they are submitting is true and accurate, but it is very important to keep your documentation because at any time spot checks could be required and you'll be asked for that documentation. So that's very important that you have that on file. Again, I see several questions here. There are only a few of us that are able to try to respond to you all during the call, but all of these questions are good ones. And I want you to remember that you can call the hotline and ask any and all of these questions. They're available, I believe, from 8 until 8 p.m. every day. That number again is 877-508-8364. If you want immediate answers and responses, I encourage you to call the hotline. When you call the number, press 1 for English, and it will send you to an employee, ask your question, and they will be more than happy to assist you. And again, if you need information about how do you get the information to your office, how do you submit it, how do you submit updates? I saw a few questions about my direct deposit information has changed. How do I update that? How do I update an application? Again, call that call care center number, 1-877-508-8364. They can answer those questions for you and connect you with your local office. As stakeholder organizations, you know, our calls, we are the Office of Outreach for Farm Service Agency, and the purpose of these webinars are for us to work with our stakeholder organizations to understand the program so that you can share it with your members, farmers, ranchers, producers. You have the best knowledge of the producers out there. We work through our state and county offices. We're headquartered in D.C., so our webinars are more focused towards stakeholder organizations. We are happy to have any producers on the line, but we do encourage you to work with your local offices. Every state, every county has an outreach coordinator who can assist you with any questions you may have. Lastly, what happens after I sign that application? So regardless of the day of the deadline to sign up, which again now is September 11th, whenever you submit your application, once you sign it, the office has 60 days to follow up with you on any questions, any clarifying information they may need. They may call and ask you some questions. But please know that you have 60 days from signing that application to resolve any of those issues. We've had a few reports of going into offices where you're told you have to have a farm number. You do not have to have a farm number. As we mentioned before, later in the process, there may be a need for a farm number to be obtained. That's going to be after the program ends, after the conservation compliance has been done. If there is a need for a farm number, we'll come back and notify you of that. But to go into our office or to contact our office to apply for this program, you do not need a farm number. I'm trying to think of other questions we've had. The calculator, the online calculator, again, you put your information in there and it generates the application. It is important to know that it only works it's an Excel spreadsheet, so it's important to know that it only works with Excel. It won't work with numbers if you're working on an Apple or iOS operating type system. It is only going to be Microsoft Excel. I'm just trying to think of questions people have asked. Will there be another opportunity for me to submit comments on the commodities that hasn't been approved in this program? As far as I know, August 17th was the last announcement for additional commodities. That could change, I'm not sure, but as of right now, all of the eligible commodities for CFAP are posted on the farmers.gov/CFAP webpage. Approval, again, you will be approved at 100% now. 100% of the program payments are being processed. If you have applied in the past and you've only received 80% of your payment, you now will receive the additional 20%. That processing is going on now. That has started. Again, you will be notified if there are any adjustments that are needed for your application or any questions that the office may have. They will follow up with you on that. To get updates, we know that some of you receive this from our sister agency, AMS, Ag Marketing Service, and we thank them so much for sharing the information, or it could be that you just got it forwarded from someone. But if you'd like to sign up to learn directly when we have additional webinars, educational opportunities, or events, feel free to subscribe to FSA updates by visiting fsa.usda.gov/subscribe. And once you put in your information, you want to enroll to receive outreach and education updates. And we always want to be able to provide you with assistance and information that's pertinent and timely. So we appreciate you participating in these webinars. Again, all 8 of the webinars are available on farmers.gov/CFAP. I think if you go down towards the bottom, you'll see webinars. You'll see tools for stakeholders. Again, stakeholders, we do encourage you to share this information. We have flyers. We have a toolkit. We have Instagram posts, Facebook posts, all kinds of pictures that you can post on your social media to help us get the word out. It's critical and crucial that we get the word out on this program before the sign-up ends on September 11th. Again, thanks, everyone. We appreciate your participation as always. Have a great day. Stay safe.